Part 4. Etiquette of Monsters. Patchwork learned that weeks are how cities keep score. Week 4 was quieter only because Noise had new competition. A man on the Green Line discovered he could make songs stuck in people's heads stop. Merciful until he sold it for cash. A realtor learned to turn doorknobs from a block away. Useful until a tenant changed after saying no. A chef in Chinatown could cure meat in seconds by humming. The Board of Health smiled and tried not to invent new forms. Elias moved through it with a body that felt like an instrument tuned a half-step sharp. He practiced slow on crowds, grazing the halo across a platform, so a stumble turned into a sway. He set freeze on a cyclist for a third of a second, so a taxi missed by a whisper, and the driver never knew. He wrote another rule. If you do it right, no one claps. He saw Rena Kovacs twice. Once at a station where a boy had set the trash on affectionate fire. Once on a sidewalk where grief was an air quality problem. Don't break yourself on strangers, she said, as if they'd picked up a conversation mid-psalm. Some of us get paid to pay. Your union must hate you, he said. She grinned like a manhole cover offering to be a coin. Abena stayed 3 days in the brick cube and left the scent of leather and old paper. She taught Mika how to hear a lie without touching hands. She taught Theo to fold paper that didn't forgive. She taught Elias the only etiquette that mattered around Marcus Veyne. Don't insult him by being sloppy, she said, tying her hair back with a plain band. He'll hurt you for it and pretend it's about manners. So I should be careful to be careful, Elias said. Careful and funny, Abena said. Eventually he'll make a mistake because he's a person. Your job is to be ready the day he forgets to be a myth. How long did it take you to learn that? A decade, she said. Then I left rather than become his mirror. What did you do for 10 years? Endured, she said. I recommend a briefer path. Rowan did not share tactics in speeches. He left them around like coins. When people start telling you their rules, you've already won half of something, he told Elias one midnight while inventorying headlamps. Make them repeat themselves. Repetition turns gods into habits. Nor taught Elias a knot that doesn't exist with rope you can't buy. It held light itself for a count of 4 and made Marcus's smile go tight when he saw it later. Elias kept the knot in his pocket like a folded joke. The call that changed their week arrived at 2:13 a.m. on a Sunday that thought it had earned quiet. A voice, rough water over gravel. Hospital. Oncology. Room 314. Please, if you can. They ran because that's what triage is. A woman stood in the doorway, hair in a scarf, 2 children asleep in chairs. A man on the bed with the look of someone who has been given specific numbers by a doctor and decided to finish the coffee anyway. The woman's name was Yara. The man's was Samir. The children's names were all of them at once. Sleep, fear, a soccer ball in the corner. I heard about you, Yara said to Alonzo first, then to Elias as if correction was a ladder. I know you can't do miracles. I am not asking for one. I am asking for time, days. I will pay. I will sell. You will not, Alonzo said gently. Debt is mine. Elias looked at the chart. Glioblastoma. 2 surgeries. Radiation like a song that had asked too much of bone. The worst numbers. He could feel the tumor in the room the way you can feel an argument not having been had yet. Talk me through the best case, Elias said to the oncologist, a woman with 60 hours of sleep missing in her eyes and gratitude wrapped around skepticism. She said words like palliative and prolonged quality and trial closed. She did not say miracle. No one did. Elias had never used reverse on a disease. He had pushed breath back into throats and unspilled glasses and re-lidded eyes. A tumor was cells, alive, his domain. But biology is not a network of buttons. It's a choir with bad timing. He looked at Alonzo. Alonzo tilted his head like a yes that meant maybe. He sat on the bed and took Samir's hand. I can try to give you days, he said. Maybe weeks. It will cost me. I need you to say yes like it's a real thing. I need you to let go when I tell you to. Samir looked at his wife, at his children, at the ceiling that had seen more bargains than God's. Yes, he said, he meant it. Elias closed his eyes and felt the halo find the man, then the mass, then the shape of the mass's song. He slowed the tumor's clock first, just to hear it. The sad choir softened. The out-of-tune stopped insisting. He slid a finger of reverse in under the cell cycle, the way a mechanic slides a feeler gauge into an engine, delicate, listening for resistance. The tumor ungrew a millimeter. Elias exhaled through his teeth. Tax arrived, pressure in his eardrums, ache in his joints, a bell in his chest, deciding to be loud. He kept going because he was this kind of man and had the courtesy to know it. The tumor unlearned an hour. A day. 2. The cost sharpened. Time wants a ledger. He felt the universe ask for a currency he didn't recognize, but could pay with bone and sleep and promises. Enough, Alonzo said, hand on Elias's shoulder, not quite command. Enough prayer. One more, Elias said, and took it. 3 days given back. A margin bought with a piece of himself he wasn't going to need later if they did this wrong. He stopped before the bell in his chest turned into a siren that called other things. Samir breathed like it had become easier to remember why. Yara pressed both hands to her mouth and slid to the floor like gratitude had cut her knees. The oncologist sat in a chair and didn't pretend not to cry. "You'll need a surgeon," Elias said, voice wrecked. "Take the window. We'll buy you another if we can. Don't let anyone film me, please." They didn't. It leaked anyway, the way good stories do when they pass through rooms with people in them. A whisper. Patchwork reversed a tumor. A rumor. Time skipper can turn back disease. A lie. Miracles are on demand with a phone number. Rowan killed the lie where he could. Nor shut the front door of the brick cube with a knot that hurt to look at. Mika walked outside and held hands with a line of people who wanted to tell the truth about what they feared would kill them. Alonzo treated the sidewalk as a waiting room, because medicine didn't change its etiquette just because miracles auditioned. Elias slept in a chair and woke with his name in too many mouths. He wrote a new rule on the whiteboard. We are not a hospital. Then under it, but we act like one. Then, after a beat, consent, triage, limits. He circled limits until the marker squeaked. Marcus Veyne sent flowers. Not a bouquet. A potted orange tree, knee-high, glossy leaves. A dozen green fruits like promises. The card said, "For your appetite in a hand that knew fountain pens." Nor took a pair of scissors to the card. "He wants you to spend yourself," she said. "He wants me to believe I can buy everyone days." "You can," Nor said. "You can also buy yourself an ending before you earn a middle. Don't be elegant for him." Elias laughed without humor. "He thinks I'm elegant?" "He thinks all worthy enemies are," Nor said. "Men like him do not prepare for mud." Abena returned long enough to spit in the dirt beside the orange tree and say, "He's teaching you to be an epic. Decline the syllabus." Then she was gone, because people who survive long wars know when to leave before the celebration. 2 days later, Marcus invited Elias to lunch in a greenhouse that didn't have an address. He didn't send an address. He sent a time and a violet tucked into a paper that said, "Show this to the doorman at Benson House. Ask for the roof." It was the kind of sly extravagant that tells you a man has practiced this kind of invitation for centuries. "Don't go," Mika said. "I'm going," Elias said. "Take me," Nor said. "I am not taking the moon to lunch," Elias said. He went alone, because the first etiquette you learn from monsters is that sometimes you let them believe you're careless where you're only stubborn. Benson House had doormen with gloved hands and a roof with glass ribs like a whale in the sun. Inside, citrus, rosemary, old wood. Marcus Veyne sat at a table with plates from different centuries as if curation were a hobby. He looked unremarkable in daylight, which was itself remarkable. He smiled like an early photograph. No teeth. "Thank you for coming," Marcus said, and sounded like he meant it. "You left a tree at my door," Elias said. "Gifts suggest confidence," Marcus said lightly. "Questions suggest fear." I have questions, Elias said, sitting. You have appetites, Marcus said, which is why you're interesting. Will you eat? Elias ate olives that had met a hand and sea in the same afternoon. Marcus didn't. He poured wine for Elias and water for himself, which is how you know a man isn't careless. Why don't you die? Elias asked, dropping the fork on purpose. Marcus laughed, delighted, like he liked people who forgot to pretend at Prelude. Because someone made a mistake a long time ago, he said. I was meant to break slowly like everyone else. I didn't. I am a story that succeeded past a deadline. You were made immortal. I was made unable to end, Marcus said, as if grammar mattered. It changes a man. Into what? Into someone who can tell when a child is about to throw a glass and stop them, Marcus said. Into someone who is very bored by elections. Into someone who can invest in railroads and the men who'll die building them, and into the lawyers who will spend those deaths again. He glanced at Elias's hands. Into someone who recognizes appetite at a table. You want me at your table. I want you where I can see you, Marcus said. Stay near me and I won't have to hurt the people you stand beside. Stand far and I'll leave coins along your route until you trip over one with a bomb in it. You can't blackmail triage, Elias said. I can starve it, Marcus said pleasantly, as if suggesting sauces. You saved a firefighter. You saved a man with a tumor. I can bury you in almost until you turn yourself into a myth. And then the city will build a ladder of need to your door you cannot climb down. Then don't, Elias said. Convince me, Marcus said, genuinely amused. Okay, Elias said, and put his fingers on the table as if pressing a piano key. He pushed slow at the edge of Marcus's attention, not at his body. The air in the greenhouse thickened a fraction. Bees moved like careful thoughts. He pushed freeze into the glass ribs and made sunlight stop glittering for a beat, as if the world had held a breath. He pressed reverse a second into a leaf until a drop of water on its edge retreated into the leaf and the leaf looked less tired. Marcus watched, pleased. Parlor, he said. Etiquette, Elias said back. You show me yours. Marcus lifted a hand and did nothing Elise could see. Somewhere below, sirens paused in sympathy. The kind of pause that happens when a light turns green and 3 drivers think at once about their mother. Elias felt the tick in his chest hiccup. He swallowed and kept his face steady. You're not a clock, Marcus said again, but you are trying to be a watchmaker. I'm trying to be bad company, Elias said. Spare me the performance, Marcus said kindly. You're building an argument you think will make my death seem like a public good. Perhaps you have time. Learn to write better. In the meantime, he slid a card across the table, embossed with nothing but a phone number and a violet. If someone you love is about to break, call me. Elias didn't touch it. What do you charge? An invitation, Marcus said, to the moment you decide to try the trick you're not ready for. What if I don't? You will, Marcus said, and was suddenly tired of pretending he didn't enjoy being right. Because you were made to. Elias left the greenhouse with the violet in his pocket, and rage arranged in 3 even lines he could not use. He went to the river and tried reverse on a gust of wind like an idiot, and the wind laughed and kept his hat. Rowan met him on the bridge as if time had RSVP'd. He's right, Rowan said. You're going to try it. I know, Elias said. I'm deciding what part of me I'm willing to break. I'd like the answer to be none. It won't be? You won't do it alone, Rowan said. I won't let any of you do it with me, Elias said. That's not your choice, Nor said, who had appeared like a good conscience with knives. You recruit us into your consequences. You don't get to fire us when it suits your nobility. Mika popped up behind the railing like a feral archivist. Did he eat? She asked. No, Elias said. Then he lies about appetite, Mika said. Useful. Abina texted a single line from somewhere he couldn't name. He will pretend to be your math. He is not. Patchwork began to plan a thing none of them wanted to do, and all of them were going to attempt. To build a moment with enough leverage that Reverse could get a grip. Not hours, not days. Just origin. A seam you can pry if you have jokes and friends and the kind of rudeness that saves cities. They needed 3 ingredients. Consent, a way to make the universe listen. Containment, a knot to keep a man who doesn't end inside a moment. Cost, paid by someone who knew the invoice was coming. Consent would be art. Containment would be Nor's. Cost would be Elias's, and he decided not to pretend otherwise. They tested consent on themselves. Mika pressed both hands to Elias's and told him the truth. "I am afraid you will make me watch you hurt yourself." His power liked that. The halo warmed and the tick kept time easier. Alonzo looked at him and said, "I will carry part of it," and the reverse practiced on a bruise in his own arm slid back a second and stayed. Theo wrote a sentence on paper and cut it. The paper bled ink and the sentence was still there. Nor made a shadow circle on the floor and said, "Step into this and tell me yes." And when Elias did, he felt something click, like a doctor with a pen light checking pupils. Containment came from an alley at 3 a.m., where Nor strung moonlight between 2 dumpsters and made a weir across air. "It won't hold forever," she said. "But we don't want forever. We want a laugh." "What's the joke?" Elias asked, for the first time admitting aloud that he believed Avina. "Something that refuses to be epic," Nor said. "He wants a duel. We give him a prank." Mika started collecting items that are funny regardless of centuries. A rubber duck, a whoopee cushion, a squeaky hammer. Elias told her no, and she put them in a bag labeled, "In case." Cost came quietly. It came in nights where Elias chose to age an hour intentionally to remember he could. It came in mornings where he didn't fix the bruise. It came in a call from Rena who said, "You saved a father. Good, save yourself and I'll buy you eggs." It came in texts from a number he didn't recognize but knew belonged to a person in a windowless room. "You will try to rewind me too far if you don't anchor yourself." Tie a line to a friend. M.V. "Does he get to do that?" Elias asked the air. "No," Nor said, "but he does." They chose the place because Marcus liked it. The greenhouse on the roof, noon, the light complicated, the bees distracted. They chose the day because it annoyed him. A Tuesday in late September, the Shatter's anniversary. They chose the pretext because etiquette mattered, lunch. Elias wore a jacket with a pocket big enough for a violet and a phone number. He left both at home. Marcus arrived unarmed if you didn't count history. He looked pleased they'd learned anything. He sat and gestured at the olives like a host. Elias put his fingers on the table like a pianist choosing a key. Nor tightened an invisible knot above the door. Mika stood on the far roof with binoculars and a whoopee cushion because sometimes you trust people with both wisdom and chaos. Rowan waited on the stairs with a debt collector in his pocket named Alonzo. "Try not to be melodramatic," Marcus said, and Elias almost laughed because it was exactly the line you say before you get hit in the face with a pie. "Consent?" Elias asked, palms up. Marcus blinked slowly. "What a luxury," he said. "No." "Okay," Elias said, and didn't move. Mika, on the other roof, sighed and put the whoopee cushion back in the bag. Nor's knot held the door closed with the dignity of a butler telling the wrong uncle to return later. "You can't do it without consent," Marcus said. "You learned at least that much." "I learned something else," Elias said, and looked at the bees. "That the universe likes jokes." He pressed slow outward in a ring, gentle, until the bees moved like small thoughts and the leaves reconsidered their applause. He pressed freeze into the ribs of glass until light agreed to be polite for a count of 4. He stepped, not teleportation, memory of a door, behind Marcus and laid 2 fingers on the back of his neck like a blessing. Marcus didn't flinch. Men who don't end forget to fear being touched. "Ask me," Elias said in his ear. For seconds. Marcus exhaled a laugh. "No. Ask me or I shout your name where it hurts your investments," Elias said. "Ask me or I find the line in your contracts where person is defined and I change the definition." "Threats," Marcus said, bored. Such a young man's appetite. "Ask me," Elias said, and let the slow go mean at the edges, not to hurt, to pin. Marcus's muscles obeyed physics for a change. He could have resisted. He chose to learn what the boy would do. "Very well," Marcus said, amused. "A second, Mr. Grant. Give me one." Consent entered the room like a stamp on a letter. The halo warmed. The tick in Elias's chest aligned with a thing bigger. Noor's knot on the air hummed as if it were part of an instrument. "1 second," Elias said, and reversed Marcus 1 second. His hair shifted back to where it had been a breath ago. A blink unblinked. A B round tripped by his ear. Nothing epic. Everything precise. The universe accepted the invoice. "Another," Marcus said. His eyes were bright now. Not teacher, not God. Gamer. "A gift." "1," Elias said, and gave him one more. Consent is a ladder. If you climb it too fast, you slip. If you climb it in rhythm, you get higher than you deserve. Elias took 5, paid with heat in his bones, felt the cost rise and bank. He stopped there. Marcus was 5 seconds younger. A joke if you squinted. A purchase if you ran a ledger. "Clever," Marcus said. "You found a hole in my etiquette." "You're borrowing from me now," Elias said. "Interest applies." "Interest?" Marcus said. "I will collect," Elias said softly, and Noor's knot cinched infinitesimally, and Mika on the other roof whispered, "Now." Elias pressed reverse against the 5 seconds, not as a line but as a loop, and the universe laughed because it likes tricks. Marcus stumbled, half a step, not fear, surprise, and in surprise, he forgot to be a myth. In forgetting, he gave Elias permission he hadn't meant to. Consent, containment, crack. Elias reached deeper. Not years, not days. A minute. He could feel it down there like a coin lost between cushions. He could pay for it with joints. He could pay for it with a week of sleep. He could pay for it with the thin white line in his hair that would appear tomorrow and stay. He pulled. The greenhouse tilted. Noor's knot sang. Marcus made a sound like a laugh, and a snarl fell in love and had a child. Elias felt origin in his hand. Not the shatter, not whatever mistake had stapled Marcus to endurance, but a point after when he had learned to enjoy it. He could have taken more. He took 60 seconds and stopped because consent had been for 1, then 5, and the joke worked best when you don't explain why it's funny. Marcus was younger by a minute. It was trivial. It was profound. It meant that reverse could hold him. It meant that the rule was not no, it was not yet. Marcus stood and smoothed his coat and hid the shiver like a gentleman hides a stain. "Rude," he said, and this time there were teeth. "Etiquette," Elias said, and this time there was prayer in it. Mika's whoopee cushion went piff-effed across the gap because she couldn't help herself. Marcus blinked at it like a man being introduced to a modern god. Noor laughed first, then Elias, because sometimes the joke is that the epic refuses to keep a straight face. Marcus chuckled despite himself, and laughed break spells. The knot loosened. The bees remembered themselves. The light forgot to obey. Marcus looked at Elias with new attention, stripped of some boredom, naked with interest. "Oh," he said, "you will be very expensive." "Good," Elias said between breaths. "I've been undercharging." Marcus left without slamming the door because he knew not to. He did not send more oranges. He sent silence, which meant he was thinking. Elias staggered into the stairwell and sat on a step as if gravity had finally noticed him. Noor lowered herself beside him and handed him water. "How much?" she asked. "A minute," he said, "and my right knee." "Spend better next time," she said. "Next time?" "Oh yes," Noor said. "We have a layaway plan now."